Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. The lullaby of love that transcends all hatred. In the quiet garden of the soul, there is an invitation that transcends all common sense, a gentle yet profound whisper from the Lord Jesus. Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. This teaching is not a dry command, but a stream of cool water that nourishes souls barren from resentment and hurt. It is a courageous path, not for the weak, but for hearts that yearn for true peace. The love Jesus speaks of does not require us to erase the memory of our pain or to pretend that nothing ever happened. This love invites us to look deeper, beyond the lenses of hatred and prejudice, to see the image of God, however faint, in the very person who has hurt us. When we choose love over hatred, we not only free them from our judgment, but more importantly, we are unshackling our own souls from the chains of enmity. Praying for our persecutors is an act of ultimate compassion. It is when we take their burden upon our shoulders and bring it before the mercy of God. That prayer has the power to transform, not only to soften the other's heart, but also to heal our own wounds. It helps us realize that holding on to hatred is like grasping a hot coal to throw at someone else. We are the ones who get burned first. The journey of loving the enemy is a challenging upstream swim, but at the end of that path lies serenity and freedom. It is the moment we realize that forgiveness is not a gift for others, but a priceless gift we give to ourselves, allowing our souls to be open and joyful. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Martin Luther King, Jr. Continuing the flow of this wondrous love, the call to love your enemy does not stop at a single truth, but opens up a whole sky of life philosophies, shining into every hidden corner of humanity and the soul. It is not a distant theory, but a real path that Jesus himself walked, and every word he spoke to the apostles or the crowds on the shores of Galilee in olden times was a seed of wisdom sown in the human heart, waiting for the day to sprout into a tree of peace and the sweet fruit of love. Let us quiet our hearts and contemplate the 10 shades of this extraordinary love through timeless dialogues. Before we begin, we kindly invite you to take a moment to subscribe to our channel to help spread this valuable content to your family and friends. We thank you, and now we invite you to listen. 1. Loving the enemy is not weakness, but the pinnacle of inner strength. True strength lies not in the muscle to retaliate, but in a heart big enough to forgive. Reacting with violence is instinct, but responding with love is a choice that requires extraordinary courage and self-control. It is the strength to conquer the belligerence within one's own heart. On a dusty road in Capernaum, the Apostle Peter clenched his fist when he saw a Roman soldier knock over an old woman's basket of goods. He whispered to Jesus, "Master, look, we must do something. This injustice cannot be tolerated." Jesus placed a hand on his shoulder, his eyes not on the soldier, but on Peter's anger. He said gently, "Peter, it is easy to draw a sword, but are you strong enough to lend a hand to help the old woman with her basket and pray for the hardened soul of that soldier? The strength to conquer an external enemy is not as great as the strength to conquer the fire of hatred within yourself." 2. Hatred is a chain that binds the soul to the past. Forgiveness is the key to freeing oneself. When we nurture hatred, we give the one who hurt us the power to continue hurting us every day. We are imprisoned in the memory of what has passed. Forgiveness, on the contrary, is the act of reclaiming freedom for our minds and peace for our hearts, to step toward the future. A woman whose son was falsely accused and beaten by guards came to Jesus, her tears flowing. "Master, I cannot forget. Every night when I close my eyes, I see the image of him being beaten. My heart boils with hatred." Jesus listened, then asked gently, "Woman, every day you sharpen the sword of hatred in your heart, but is it not your own soul that is cut and bleeds? Lay that sword down, not because he deserves to be forgiven, but because you deserve to be at peace." 3. Within every enemy lies a hidden image of God, though it may be marred by error. This teaching invites a penetrating gaze to see past the wrongful act to the deeper essence of a person, a creature of God, bearing within them the seed of goodness and also full of their own wounds. To love them is to try to see them through God's eyes. The apostles were discussing Matthew, the tax collector, whom the entire nation saw as a traitor. John said, "How can you sit at the same table with such a man?" Jesus looked toward Matthew, who was sitting alone in a corner, and said, "John, you see a tax collector. I see a child of God who is lost in loneliness. You look at the shell of sin. I search for the image of my Father within. The light is still there. It is just being obscured." 4. Love is the only force capable of breaking the cycle of hatred. Violence begets violence. Revenge leads to revenge. It is an endless spiral that pulls everyone down. Only an unexpected act of love, an unhoped-for forgiveness, can break this chain of injustice and create a new beginning. 2 clans in a small village had a feud for generations. After a recent brawl, people from both sides were injured. They came to Jesus for judgment. An elder said, "An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. That is justice." Jesus looked at them, his voice sorrowful. "If it is always an eye for an eye, soon your whole village will be blind. Who will be the first one clear-sighted enough to see the path of peace? Who will be the first to sow a seed of love in this stony ground of hatred to end the cycle of suffering for your descendants?" 5. Praying for one's persecutors is a healing remedy for the one who prays. When we pray for those who harm us, the focus of the prayer is not to miraculously change them, but to change our own hearts. It softens our hardness, replaces bitterness with compassion, and helps us entrust the burden of judgment to God. The Apostle Thomas doubted, "Master, what good is it to pray for those who stone us? How can my words reach their ears?" Jesus smiled gently. "Thomas, when you pick up a stone to throw, your hand gets dirty. When you pray, you are washing your hands and your soul before our Father in heaven. The prayer is first a stream of healing for you, helping you to cast off the burden of anger so your soul can be light." 6. True love does not wait for the other party's repentance. If love is only given when the enemy admits fault, then it is an exchange, not grace. The love taught by the Lord is a unilateral gift, given without conditions, just as the sun shines on both the righteous and the wicked. A Samaritan woman asked Jesus by Jacob's well, "You Jews despise us. Why do you speak to me and ask me for water?" Jesus replied, "The love of God is like the water in this well. It does not ask who comes to draw water, where they are from, or if they are worthy. It is simply there to quench the thirst of anyone who needs it. I love not because others are good, but because God is good." 7. Loving the external enemy begins with facing and loving the enemy within. Often, what we hate most in others are the very flaws, the shadows, that we dare not acknowledge in ourselves. Learning to love the enemy is learning to face our own imperfections, to forgive our own mistakes, and to accept ourselves completely. A young Pharisee questioned Jesus about his association with sinners. He was proud of his own purity. Jesus looked deep into his eyes and said, "You hate the darkness in them, but you fear the darkness in yourself. You build high walls of law so as not to face your own weakness. Learn to have mercy on your own stumbles first, and you will find it much easier to love another sinner." 8. Love is not a feeling, but a concrete action. The Lord's teaching does not require us to have affection for our enemies. Instead, it calls us to act in a loving way, to help them when they are in trouble, to speak well of them when they are slandered, to pray for them. The action itself will gradually transform the feeling. "Master, how can I love the neighbor who stole my crops?" a farmer asked. Jesus replied, "I do not tell you to invite him to dinner immediately, but if you see his donkey fall under its burden, would you not go and help lift it up? If you know his family is short of food, would you not secretly leave a little wheat at their door? Begin with action, and your heart will follow." 9. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting justice, but placing faith in God's righteousness. Loving the enemy does not mean condoning wrongful behavior or ignoring the need for justice. Instead, it means we relinquish the right to personal revenge and trust that God, who sees all, will be a just and merciful judge. After hearing Jesus preach, a man whose father had been unjustly killed said angrily, "If I love my father's murderer, who will demand justice for him?" Jesus replied, "My son, the desire for justice is righteous, but human revenge often creates more injustice. Entrust judgment to the Father in heaven. Your task is to free your heart from the poison of hatred, so it does not destroy the rest of your life. God's justice is greater than human vengeance." 10. The pinnacle of loving the enemy is to become like God. The ultimate purpose of this teaching is not just to resolve conflicts or find personal peace. It is an invitation to partake in the very nature of God, who sends rain on the just and the unjust. By loving unconditionally, humans most perfectly reflect the image of their Creator. On a quiet evening on a hillside, the apostles gathered around Jesus. He pointed to the distance, where the setting sun was painting both the green fields and the barren, stony lands with gold. He said, "Your Father in heaven makes his sun rise on the evil and on the good. When you learn to love even those who harm you, you are not just living in harmony with your brothers, you are truly becoming children of your Father in heaven, taking on his very heart." 11. The enemy is the truest mirror, reflecting the wounds and weaknesses we are hiding. People are often angered not by the nature of an action, but because that action touches upon a pre-existing pain, insecurity, or flaw within them. The enemy, by the discomfort they cause, inadvertently becomes the teacher who shows us where we need to be healed. Loving them is thanking them for that lesson. The Apostle Nathanael was greatly annoyed by a Greek in the crowd who was boastful about his knowledge. He said to Jesus, "I cannot stand his arrogance." Jesus looked at him with a penetrating gaze. "Nathanael, why does his arrogance disturb you? Is it because it touches upon a hidden fear within you that your knowledge of the law is not deep enough? Do not look at him anymore. Look into your own heart. He is merely the wind that shows you the window of your soul is open." 12. The effort to empathize is the first step to love. Try to understand the story behind their actions. No one is born wanting to be evil. Their actions are often the result of a series of hurts, fears, or misunderstandings. Before judging, try to put yourself in their shoes to understand what pain has made them so. Compassion will arise from understanding. A Roman soldier treated the people cruelly. Everyone shunned and cursed him. But Jesus asked, "Does anyone know where he comes from? Does anyone know what he has witnessed in battle? Does anyone know how his wife and children back home are faring? You hate the bitter fruit, but have you ever wondered about the tree that bore it? Pray for the root of the pain within him." 13. Loving the enemy requires a deep humility, an admission that we too are capable of causing harm. Self-righteousness, the sense of being the victim, is the greatest barrier to forgiveness. When we realize that in different circumstances, with different experiences, we too could stumble and hurt others, we will find it easier to sympathize with their fall. A Pharisee was recounting the sins of a woman to Jesus. He concluded, "I would never do such things." Jesus quietly drew on the sand, then looked up and asked, "Sir, if you were born in poverty like her, if you had suffered the injustices she has, if you had not been taught the word of God as you have, are you so sure you would not have stumbled? Be careful when you stand on high to judge others, for it is very easy to slip from there." 14. Love is only truly possible when the ego is set aside. Hatred is often tied to a wounded ego. He dared to disrespect me. She humiliated me. When we can separate the actions of others from our sense of self-worth, forgiveness becomes possible. True love is not about protecting the ego, but about expressing the soul. James and John returned angry after being rejected by a Samaritan village. "Lord, do you want us to call fire down from heaven to destroy them?" Jesus looked at the two sons of thunder and said, "Are you angry because that village rejected me, or because they rejected you? Your ego has been offended, and it cries out for revenge. But the kingdom of heaven is not built by proud egos, but by souls that know how to love even when rejected." 15. The real victory is not in defeating the enemy, but in conquering the hatred within oneself. The world defines persecute, victory, as the strong overpowering the weak. But Jesus taught a different definition. Victory is when our hearts can maintain peace and love in the face of another's provocation. The greatest victor is the one who can smile and bless the person who wishes them harm. A large wrestler came to Jesus after losing a match because his opponent cheated. He was furious. "I must find a way to humiliate him, Master." Jesus asked, "Do you want to win that match, or do you want to win at life? You lost in the ring, but you still have the chance to win a much greater match. It is the match against the hatred that possesses you. Forgive him, and you will become invincible in spirit." 16. Love for the enemy is the most eloquent and living testimony of faith. Anyone can love those who love them. But when a person can love and treat with kindness those who persecute them, that action makes the whole world pause and wonder what power enabled them to do such an extraordinary thing. That love becomes a light that cannot be hidden, a testament to the power of God. Many disciples were persecuted in Jerusalem, but instead of cursing, they prayed for the soldiers who arrested them. A Roman centurion who witnessed this was amazed. He sought out the apostles and asked, "Why do you do that?" Peter replied, "Because our Master did so on the cross. Love is stronger than death, and it is also stronger than your hatred." 17. Loving the enemies of your friends is a dual test of faith. Loving one's own enemy is hard enough. Loving the one who has harmed a loved one is infinitely harder. It requires us to overcome righteous indignation and loyalty to our friends to attain a more encompassing love, a love modeled on God's. Mary and Martha tearfully told Jesus about someone who had spread malicious rumors to harm their brother Lazarus's reputation. Martha said, "I can forgive someone who harms me, but I cannot forgive someone who harms my brother." Jesus comforted them. "I understand your pain. Continue to defend Lazarus with the truth, but do not let hatred for that person turn your hearts into a prison. Entrust him to the Father's judgment and pray for them. Your love for Lazarus will not be complete if it causes you to lose your love for God." 18. Love must overcome collective enemies, breaking down racial and social prejudices. Hatred is often directed not at an individual, but at a whole group of people: the Romans, the Samaritans, the tax collectors. The Lord's teaching requires us to break down these walls of prejudice, to see each individual as a separate person, not as a member of a group we hate. When passing through a Samaritan village, the people there did not welcome Jesus and his disciples. The disciples immediately said, "This whole Samaritan race is like that." Jesus turned, his voice firm. "You are letting the rejection of a few sow seeds of hatred for an entire people in your hearts. Do you know their names? Do you know their stories? Never let the laziness of prejudice replace the hard work of love." 19. Refusing to speak ill of an enemy is a silent act of love. When we have the opportunity to belittle, humiliate, or join in gossiping about our enemy, but we choose to remain silent or to speak a word of defense, that is an act of noble love. It protects their dignity in their absence and preserves the purity of our own souls. Someone came to inform Jesus that a Pharisee who had criticized him was plotting against him. The person added a few words of slander about the man's private life. After listening, Jesus simply said, "His business is with God. He will answer to him. Our business is to pray that he finds the truth. Do not use another's faults to stain your own tongue." 20. Love is an invitation for the enemy to enter a third space, beyond right and wrong. Arguments usually only have two sides, right and wrong, win and lose. Love creates a third space, a space of reconciliation, of seeking a solution together where the dignity of both parties is respected. It doesn't ask who is right, but what can heal us. Two brothers arguing over an inheritance came to Jesus, each insisting he was right. Jesus did not divide the inheritance for them. Instead, he asked the older brother, "What does your brother mean to you?" Then he asked the younger brother, "What childhood memory with your brother is most precious to you?" He did not solve their problem, but invited them to step out of the right-wrong battle and into the space of brotherhood. Before we continue with today's journey of discovery, we would greatly appreciate it if you could take a moment to leave a comment and share your feelings. If you found this content valuable, please don't forget to hit the share button to spread these positive vibes to your friends and family. And now, let's get back to the program. 21. To love when there is no reason to love is an act of pure faith. Human reason will say, "He doesn't deserve it." Experience will say, "He will only hurt me again." But faith will whisper, "Just love, because that is the way of the Lord." Loving the enemy is an act of surrender, an act of trusting in God's wisdom more than in human calculation. Andrew worried, "Master, I have tried to be kind to my quarrelsome neighbor, but he only pushes further. This is futile." Jesus replied, "Andrew, you sow seeds not because you are certain the soil is good, but because that is the work of a sower. You love not because you are certain people will respond, but because that is the nature of a child of God. Sow in faith, and the Father in heaven will take care of the harvest. 22. Absorbing hatred without retaliating is how we participate in the Lord's passion. When we endure slander or an unjust act without seeking revenge, we are taking up a tiny fragment of the cross. We are turning personal pain into a prayer with our own bodies, communing with Christ's sacrifice to redeem the world. A female disciple wept because she was falsely accused. Jesus told her, "My child, when the world throws bitterness at you, and you respond with silence and prayer, you are turning poison into medicine. Your pain is no longer meaningless. It becomes part of the river of grace flowing from my cross to cleanse the world." 23. God's grace is infinite. Giving forgiveness never impoverishes us. We often act as if forgiveness is a limited resource, to be saved for those who are worthy. But God's love and grace are like a candle. It can light 1,000 other candles without diminishing itself. "I have forgiven him 7 times already," Peter said. Jesus answered with the parable of the servant who was forgiven a debt of 10,000 talents, but refused to forgive his friend a debt of 100 denarii. Then he concluded, "Peter, the Father in heaven has forgiven you a debt you could never repay. How can you count every small coin of forgiveness with your brother? The treasury of his grace is never depleted." 24. God can use an enemy as an instrument to hone and sanctify our souls. Without pressure, there are no diamonds. The people who give us the most trouble are often the ones who help us grow the most in patience, humility, and trust. The enemy is the touchstone that shows whether our faith is real or not. A young monk in the Essene community complained to Jesus about another brother who always provoked him. "He is a thorn in my side." Jesus said, "Then thank the Father in heaven for that thorn. Without that thorn, how would you learn patience? Without that friction, how would the sharp edges of pride in you be worn down? God is using him to make you holier." 25. Forgiveness is the act of remembering that we too are forgiven sinners. The foundation of all forgiveness we extend to others is a deep awareness of the forgiveness God has extended to us. When we want to close our hearts, let us remember the times we have stumbled, the mistakes for which we have been loved and pardoned. On the seashore, Jesus asked Peter 3 times, "Do you love me?" After each affirmation, Jesus did not bring up Peter's denial. Instead, he said, "Feed my sheep." The message was clear. "I have forgiven and restored you. Now go and do the same for others. Forgive as you have been forgiven." 26. Sometimes the highest act of love is wise silence. Not every battle needs our participation. Not every criticism deserves a response. There are times when silence is not agreement or weakness, but a refusal to give evil more energy from our reaction. It is a way to keep our peace and not escalate conflict. When Jesus was on trial before Pilate and the chief priests, countless false testimonies were brought against him, but he remained silent. A disciple later asked, "Why did you not defend yourself? You could have exposed all their lies." Jesus replied, "When the truth is being crushed by the screams of hatred, words become useless. My silence was the most powerful answer, entrusting everything to the Father." 27. Love does not mean allowing oneself to be abused. It includes setting healthy boundaries. Loving the enemy is not about laying out a welcome mat for them to continue trampling on us. True love also includes loving and protecting oneself. We can refuse an abusive act, set a clear boundary, while still maintaining a heart free of resentment and willing to pray for them. A woman told of how her relative constantly took advantage of her kindness. Jesus said, "A fig tree that bears no fruit must be pruned. Your heart must always be open to love, but your door does not need to be open to those who wish to enter and destroy. Say no firmly to their actions, but never say no to their souls before God." 28. An enemy in need is the ultimate test of compassion. When the person who once harmed us falls into dire straits and needs our help, it is a golden opportunity to turn the teaching "love your enemy" into concrete action. Helping them at this time is the most effective way to heal both parties. Jesus told the parable of the Good Samaritan. After finishing, he asked the lawyer, "Which of the three was a neighbor to the man who fell among robbers?" It is noteworthy that the man who was robbed was a Jew who considered Samaritans enemies. But in his time of need, the Samaritan did not see an enemy, but only a human being who needed to be saved. 29. Forgive even the invisible enemies, the systems, the injustices. Sometimes our pain is not caused by a specific individual, but by an unjust system, an oppressive social structure. To love in this case is to work tirelessly to change that structure, not with violence or hatred, but with persistent struggle for truth and charity. The fishermen complained about the unreasonable taxes of the Roman Empire. They hated Rome. Jesus said, "Do not hate Rome, for it is just an idea. Pray for the specific people who run it, for the guard, for the tax collector, for Governor Pilate. Fight for justice, but do it with a heart for people, not with hatred for a system." 30. The journey of loving the enemy ends where it began, with forgiving oneself. After all, the greatest and most difficult enemy to forgive is often ourselves, with our mistakes, failures, and imperfections. If we cannot be merciful to ourselves, we cannot be truly merciful to others. Forgiving ourselves is the final step to being truly free and living fully in love. After the resurrection, Peter was still tormented by his sin. He felt unworthy. In one of their encounters, Jesus never mentioned the past. He only gave him a mission. Peter wept, not from sorrow, but from the realization that his master's love was greater than his failure. He had been forgiven, and only by accepting that forgiveness could he truly begin again, loving others with the same love he had received. 31. Hate is a full-time and exhausting job. Love is a liberating act that connects us to an infinite source of energy. Nurturing hatred requires us to constantly regenerate negative energy, to recall the pain, to be on guard against the other person. It drains our vitality and joy. Conversely, when we choose love, though difficult at first, we are connecting ourselves to the life source of God. Love does not consume, it regenerates. A stonemason complained to Jesus, "I am so tired, Master. Every day I think of ways to get back at the one who wronged me. I lose sleep and appetite." Jesus pointed to a nearby flowing stream and asked, "My son, is the rock that blocks the water tired? It must brace itself against the force of the entire stream, and the water, it simply flows. Your hatred is that rock. My Father's love is the stream. Do you want to be the rock or the water?" 32. An act of love is an investment in eternity. An act of hatred is but a momentary echo. A curse, an act of revenge, will fade with time, leaving only bitterness. But an act of forgiveness, a gesture of love toward an enemy, will create ripples that spread forever in the kingdom of heaven, remembered not by man, but by God. The disciples saw a monument honoring a Roman general who had slaughtered many people. They were outraged. Jesus said, "His name is carved in stone, but soon the stone will weather and the name will disappear. But if a soldier in that army secretly gave a piece of bread to an orphan, that act is not carved anywhere, but it is shining brightly before the Father in heaven. Do you want to build for this life or for the next?" 33. Hate gives us the illusion of control. Love is the courage to accept that we control nothing but our own hearts. When we hate, we feel like we are doing something about the past, that we are holding the power of judgment. But that is just an illusion. The past cannot be changed. Love is the act of letting go of that need for control, accepting our powerlessness, and entrusting everything to the power and providence of God. "I will never forgive until he admits his mistake," a man declared. Jesus asked, "So you are handing the key to your peace into his hands? You are letting his actions determine the state of your soul. You cannot control him, but you can control your heart. Take back that key. Open the door to peace for yourself." 34. To love the enemy is to see the potential God has placed in them, not just their sinful reality. It is an act of hope. We look at a person not as they are, but as they could become through grace. We love the seed of holiness in them, even if it is buried under layers of error. Beside the woman caught in adultery, many saw only a sinner deserving of stoning. Jesus bent down, and when he looked up, he saw not just her act, but her future. He told her, "Go, and from now on do not sin again." He did not just forgive her past. He gave her a new future, a new potential. His love saw a saint in a sinner. 35. Hate makes us blind, seeing only darkness. Love restores our sight, helping us see the full picture with all the colors of grace. When you hate someone, all their actions, good or bad, are interpreted through a negative lens. You only look for evidence to reinforce your hatred. Love removes that lens, helping you to see things more fairly, to see their efforts, their pains, and their good points as well. A disciple said, "That Pharisee gives alms to the poor only to show off." Jesus replied, "Perhaps, but you focus on his motive and ignore an important fact. That poor man had a meal. Your hatred sees only pride, but love would also see the poor being fed. Do not let hatred blind you to the good, however small." 36. Revenge makes us a slave to the very person we hate. When we plan revenge, all our thoughts and actions are dictated by the actions of our enemy. We allow them to control our lives from a distance. The truly free person is one who acts based on their own values, not in reaction to the provocation of others. A merchant was cheated by a rival. He fumed, "I will make him go bankrupt, even if I lose everything." Jesus said, "So you are willing to destroy yourself just to see him destroyed? You are letting his actions decide your fate. Stop being his shadow. Walk in your own light. Rebuild your business with integrity. That is the noblest revenge." 37. To become poor in the face of insults is the way to become rich in spirit. The Lord's teaching, "Blessed are the poor in spirit," can also be applied here. The worldly rich cling to their possessions. The proud cling to their honor, and to insults. The poor in spirit Let insults pass through them like water through their fingers, not holding on, not clinging. They are free and rich in peace. A man was spat upon while preaching about the kingdom of heaven. He was about to retaliate in anger, but Jesus held him back and later said to him in private, "They spat on you, but they cannot touch your soul unless you allow it. Treat that insult like dust on your cloak. You just need to shake it off, not keep it in your heart." The richest person is the one who has nothing to lose from the world's insults. 38. Forgiveness is not about erasing the memory, but about healing the memory. We cannot forget the pain, but we can choose how it affects us. Forgiveness is a spiritual surgery, removing the venom from the wound of memory. The scar remains, but it no longer causes pain. Instead, it becomes a reminder of the healing power of love. "How can I forget?" a widow whose husband was unjustly killed asked Jesus. Jesus replied, "I do not ask you to forget, but I invite you to let the love of God transform that memory. Instead of remembering it with hatred, remember it as a call to prayer. Instead of it being a source of bitterness, let it be a source of compassion. The wound will not disappear, but it will no longer control you." 39. The act of loving an enemy is a declaration that God's justice is greater than human justice. Human justice is often about punishment. God's justice includes restoration. When we forgive, we are not saying the act was right, but we are declaring our belief in a higher justice, a final judgment that belongs to God, who can transform even the sinner. They brought a thief to Jesus. They said, "The law says to cut off his hand." Jesus looked at the trembling man, then said to the crowd, "The law punishes the act, but can it heal the heart? Do you want a one-handed thief or a restored brother? Leave the punishment to the judges, but give this soul your prayers and a chance to repent. My Father's justice seeks life, not mutilation." 40. The enemy can be the shortest path to God. When life is easy, we easily forget to pray. But when faced with opposition, persecution, we are forced to our knees, to cling to God more than ever. The hardship caused by the enemy can become the lever that pushes us into God's arms. A disciple lamented, "Since I started following you, Master, I have made so many more enemies." Jesus smiled, "And you also have many more reasons to pray, don't you? Do you see that when you are rejected by the world, you find a deeper comfort in the Father in heaven? Do not just curse the storm. Thank it for making you run to a safe shelter." Before we continue with today's journey of discovery, we would greatly appreciate it if you could take a moment to leave a comment and share your feelings. If you found this content valuable, please don't forget to hit the share button to spread these positive vibes to your friends and family. And now, let's get back to the program. 41. A single act of love can dissolve the anger of a crowd. Crowd psychology is easily incited by hatred, but it is also easily moved by a courageous act of compassion. One person who dares to go against the current of hatred can awaken the conscience of others and completely change the situation. When the crowd was about to stone the woman, they were filled with collective rage. Jesus could have argued with them, but he chose a different action. He silently wrote. His silence and incomprehensible action broke the frenzy. It gave each person a moment to look at themselves. His act of love not only saved a woman, but it also saved the crowd from their own crime. 42. Loving the enemy teaches us to distinguish between the person and their actions. We are called to hate the sin, but love the sinner. This is a subtle distinction. We can and must appeal injustice, evil, and falsehood. But we must not let our opposition to the act turn into hatred for the person committing the act. Philip asked Jesus, "How can I both oppose the oppression of the Romans and love them?" Jesus replied, "You oppose their swords with truth, their pride with humility, their cruelty with service. You fight against Romanness, not against the soldier named Lucius who has an old mother waiting at home. Always remember that." 43. Forgiveness is a gift we give to future generations. Hatred is hereditary. Family and national feuds are often passed down from one generation to the next. When one person decides to forgive, they not only free themselves but also break the chain of hatred, allowing their descendants to inherit a legacy of peace instead of war. Two young people from rival clans came to Jesus for advice. Jesus asked them, "Do you want your children to play with each other in the future, or do you want them to continue throwing stones at each other over the fence? Your choice today will determine your children's playground tomorrow. Do you want to leave them a garden or a battlefield?" 44. True love knows how to listen, even when what it hears is an accusation. Often, behind anger and hostility is a deep sense of being hurt and unheard. One of the most powerful acts of love is to be silent and truly listen to the other's point of view, trying to understand their pain, even if we do not agree with them. Nicodemus came to Jesus by night. He began with questions representing the perspective of the Jewish leaders. Jesus did not interrupt him. He listened to all his fears and prejudices before beginning the dialogue. By listening, he opened a door for love and truth. 45. Praying for specific blessings will transform the heart of the one who prays. Instead of just praying vaguely, "Lord, change my enemy," try praying, "Lord, let their children be healthy, let their crops be bountiful, let them find peace in their family." When we begin to desire specific good things for them, our hearts no longer have room for bitterness. A woman prayed, "Lord, punish the woman who slandered me." Jesus heard and said to her, "My child, try praying differently. Try praying, 'Lord, give her a joyful day,' so she no longer has time to speak ill of others. You will see which prayer brings more peace to yourself." 46. To love is to participate in God's creation. To hate is to be complicit in destruction. God is the Creator, and all His actions are directed toward life and flourishing. Love, forgiveness, reconciliation are all creative. They create new relationships, new futures. Hatred only seeks to destroy, to devalue, to bring things to nothing. When we love, we are doing God's work. Looking at the lilies of the field, Jesus said to his disciples, "See how beautifully your Father has woven them." When you forgive a brother, you are also weaving something beautiful in the unseen world. When you nurture hatred, you are tearing the tapestry that the Father is weaving. Do you want to be a weaver or a destroyer? 47. The enemy helps us recognize our idols. What makes us unable to forgive? Honor? Money? The feeling of being right? Those are the idols we worship more than God and His teachings. The enemy, by challenging those idols, helps us to recognize and overthrow them to place God at the center. A rich man was cheated out of a large sum of money and could not forgive. Jesus told him, "You cannot forgive not because the sum is large, but because you have placed your faith in money more than in my Father's providence." That swindler did not just take your money. He inadvertently showed you where your true treasure lies. Thank him for that lesson, and go find the treasure that can never be lost. 48. Forgiveness is a conscious act of releasing the enemy from the prison of judgment in our minds. When we don't forgive, we make ourselves both the judge and the jailer, imprisoning the image of the enemy in our heads 24/7. Forgiveness is the declaration, "The trial in my mind is over. I am no longer your judge. I hand you over to God." That act frees both parties. A disciple said, "Every time I close my eyes, I see his face and what he did." Jesus said, "So you have given him free lodging in your mind, and not only does he not pay rent, but he also makes a mess of everything. Today, issue an eviction order. Say, in the name of God's love, you are no longer welcome here. And fill that room with prayer." 49. True love not only endures the enemy, but also rejoices when they are restored. The highest level of love is not reluctant forgiveness, but genuine joy at seeing the one who wronged us find the right path and be happy. This is the heart of the Father in the parable of the prodigal son, who threw a feast to celebrate when his lost son returned. When Matthew the tax collector followed Jesus, many still despised him. But Jesus celebrated his conversion. He said, "There will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who do not need to repent." Do you want to share in the joy of heaven? Learn to rejoice when a lost brother finds his way home. 50. Ultimately, love is the final word of the universe. In the grand tapestry of salvation history, hatred, sin, betrayal, and death are but temporary chapters. But love, which is the very essence of God, is the beginning, the center, until it is the end of every story. It is the power that created the universe, the power that conquered death on the cross, and it will be the final verdict. To live in love is to live in harmony with ultimate reality. On the last evening, Jesus told his disciples, "A new command I give you. Love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another." This was not just a piece of advice, but a summation of his entire message. Love is not one option among many. It is the only way, the only truth, and the only life. All other philosophies boil down to this. To love is to become like God, and that is the ultimate purpose of humanity. 51. Forgiveness is not a single act, but a resolution repeated daily. The wound of memory can flare up like a chronic pain. There will be mornings when we wake up and realize the anger is still there. Forgiveness is not a one-time wave of the hand to be done with it, but a conscious choice made every day, every time the painful memory arises. It is a steadfast commitment to our own peace. A woman told Jesus, "Master, I thought I had forgiven, but today the hatred rose up again as if it were only yesterday." Jesus pointed to a rower making his way upstream. Look, he doesn't just push the oar once. He has to push continuously, again and again, to fight the current. The current of hurt within you is the same. Every day, choose to push the oar of forgiveness. Do not be discouraged. That very persistence is faith. 52. Love is when the soul teaches the body how to be at peace. Sometimes, even when the mind has decided to forgive, the body still reacts, a racing heart, clenched fists upon seeing the enemy. That is memory stored in the body. To love in this case is an act of the soul, gently and patiently telling the body, "It's okay. We are safe now. We have chosen the path of love." an old soldier was haunted by battles. He said, "I forgive the man who stabbed me, but my scar still aches when the weather turns cold." Jesus replied, "Your body remembers the pain. That is natural. Do not fight it. Instead, every time it aches, place your hand on it and whisper, 'This wound is proof of survival.' And now, it is a reminder to pray for the one who caused it. Use the pain of your body to nurture the compassion of your soul." 53. Love can coexist with the pursuit of justice, but never with revenge. Loving the enemy does not mean letting them continue to cause harm. Seeking justice through the law or the community is a righteous act to protect the weak and prevent evil. But the motive must be the restoration of order and fairness, not the desire to see the enemy suffer and be humiliated. A widow's son had his land seized by a powerful man. She came to ask Jesus, "What should I do?" Jesus said, "Go to the judge, present your case bravely and clearly, demand back what is yours. But as you do so, guard your heart. Pray for justice for yourself, but at the same time, pray for mercy for his soul. Fight for the truth, but do not let hatred become your weapon." 54. Love does not necessarily require trust to be restored. Forgiveness is a command. Trust is a choice based on behavior. We can and must forgive those who have wronged us to free ourselves. But whether to trust them again depends on whether they have truly changed and proven themselves trustworthy. Love can forgive unconditionally, but wisdom requires evidence. A shop owner was robbed by an employee. He forgave the man, but did not rehire him. The disciples asked Jesus about this. Jesus said, "He did the right thing. He forgave the debt, that is love. But he did not hand the keys to the treasury to one who was once dishonest. That is wisdom. My Father's love is not blind naivety." 55. The first step of love is not a feeling, but a willingness. No one can force themselves to feel love for someone they hate. But anyone can make a decision. "Lord, I have no love for this person, but I am willing for you to sow the smallest seed of love in my heart. I open a small crack in my stony heart." That willingness itself is a prayer that pleases God. "Master, my heart is empty. I cannot love," a person said. Jesus replied, "You do not need to create the river. You only need to move one small stone so the water can begin to seep through. Your willingness today is that moved stone. Leave the rest to the Father in heaven." 56. In the spiritual realm, a blessing for an enemy is more powerful than 1,000 curses. Hatred and curses belong to the kingdom of darkness. They only create more darkness. But a blessing, an unexpected act of love, is a ray of light carrying the power of God. It shatters the logic of darkness, confusing it and causing it to lose its power. It is a spiritual weapon the world cannot understand. When the disciples were driven out of a city, they were angry and wanted to curse it. Jesus stopped them. "You do not know what you are asking. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Stop, turn back towards the city, and bless it. Ask the Father to give them the peace they have refused us. Your blessing will fly higher than their walls and shake the foundations of their hatred." 57. Forgiveness is the act of patiently untying a complex knot. Resentment is like a knot, tightening day by day, binding us to the other person and to the past. Forgiveness is not cutting it with a sword, but the act of patiently, gently loosening one string at a time. Each prayer, Each small act of kindness, each time we choose not to be angry, is a moment we loosen that knot until it is completely undone. "This is too hard, Master. I cannot do it overnight," a person said. Jesus replied, "Who can untangle a knotted net with a single pull? You will only tear it to pieces. Be patient. Today you untangle one thread, tomorrow another. Each time you gain a little more freedom. The Father in heaven looks not at your speed, but at your persistence." 58. Hate is a poison we mix for ourselves, hoping the other person will drink it. This is one of the most bitter truths about hatred. We spend time, energy, and emotion nurturing anger, harming our own physical and mental health, while the person we hate may be living happily, perhaps even unaware. The only person punished by our unforgiveness is ourselves. A woman, thin and pale with resentment, came to Jesus. Jesus asked her, "Do you drink poison every day?" She was surprised. "No, Master." Jesus said gently, "Yes, you do. Hatred is a poison. It eats you from the inside, destroying your peace and joy. Stop drinking it, not because the other person deserves it, but because you deserve to live." 59. When we forgive, we are participating in the deepest joy of God. Heaven does not rejoice in punishment. Heaven rejoices in restoration. When a lost child returns, when a broken relationship is mended, when a bitter heart becomes sweet, it is a festival in heaven. When we choose to forgive, we not only bring peace to ourselves, but also bring joy to the Creator Himself. Jesus said, "When the shepherd finds the lost sheep, he rejoices. When the woman finds the lost coin, she rejoices. Likewise, when you find your brother again through forgiveness, my Father in heaven also rejoices." Do you want to be the cause of God's joy? 60. Love has the power to rewrite the meaning of the past. Love cannot change the fact that something bad happened, but it can completely change the meaning and power of that fact over our lives. A memory that was once a source of pain and shame can, through love and forgiveness, become a story of strength, growth, and grace. The Samaritan woman at the well had a shameful past, but after encountering the love of Jesus, she no longer hid it. She ran back to her village and used her own story to testify. Her past did not change, but its meaning did. From a burden, it became a launching pad for her mission. Before we continue with today's journey of discovery, we would greatly appreciate it if you could take a moment to leave a comment and share your feelings. If you found this content valuable, please don't forget to hit the share button to spread these positive vibes to your friends and family. And now, let's get back to the program. 61. When your forgiveness troubles your loved ones, love must be doubled. Once for the enemy, once for your loved ones. This is a delicate challenge. Sometimes, family and friends want us to continue hating the one who hurt us, as they see it as a sign of loyalty. When we choose to forgive, they may feel betrayed. At this point, we need a patient love to explain to our loved ones, and a courageous love not to abandon our decision to forgive. A man forgave the person who had harmed his family. His brothers were furious. "You are betraying our parents." He came to Jesus for advice. Jesus said, "Consider the older brother in the story of the prodigal son. He was angry because of his father's love. Be gentle with your brothers, as the father was gentle with his older son. Tell them, my love for our family has not diminished, but my heart must be big enough to follow the Lord's command." 62. The most dangerous enemy is the one we must meet every day in our own family. Loving a distant enemy is difficult. Loving a father, mother, sibling, or spouse who causes us constant pain is a true cross. This love requires clear boundaries, ceaseless prayer, and an extraordinary reliance on grace to prevent daily proximity from turning into permanent bitterness. A woman wept over her abusive husband. Jesus listened for a long time, then said, "You cannot change him, but you can refuse to let his bitterness become yours. Create a small, peaceful garden in your soul that he cannot touch. Water it every day with prayer, and seek help from the community." Love does not mean enduring destruction alone. 63. Loving someone who doesn't realize they've hurt you requires a love that needs no acknowledgement. Some people cause pain not out of malice, but out of thoughtlessness, selfishness, or ignorance. They genuinely don't know they were wrong. Waiting for an apology from them is hopeless. Loving them is a completely selfless act, a love given without needing a response or even recognition. A young person said sadly, "My father will never understand the pain he caused me." Jesus said, "Then love him as the Father in heaven loves us. He makes the sun rise on the ungrateful as well." Your love for your Father does not depend on his understanding. It depends on the vastness of your heart. 64. Love is the affirmation of one's own worth in the face of an enemy's indifference. Sometimes what is more painful than hatred is indifference. The enemy doesn't bother to hate us. They simply see us as non-existent. To love in this case is not to try to get their attention, but an internal act of affirming that our value does not come from their recognition, but from being a beloved child of God. Matthew, when he was a tax collector, was ignored by the entire community. That indifference was more painful than curses. When Jesus came and called his name, he not only gave him a place, but affirmed his worth. The Lord's love said, "You exist, you matter, even if the whole world ignores you." 65. Forgiveness begins with an individual, but has the power to heal an entire community. Like a pebble thrown into a lake creating countless ripples, an act of forgiveness in a community full of hatred can begin a broad healing process. The first person who dares to forgive inspires and enables others to do the same, breaking the chains of collective bitterness. In a village divided by a long-standing feud, Jesus healed the child of a person from one side. Then, he asked that very family to bring water to an elder from the other side. That small act, born of gratitude, became the first bridge to reconnect the two sides of the division. 66. Love is not what we do, but who we become. At first, loving the enemy is an effort, a strained action. But as we practice it day after day, it gradually transforms us from within. It is no longer something we do, but becomes a part of who we are, a natural reflex of a heart molded by grace. We no longer try to love, we simply are love. Jesus said, "A good tree bears good fruit. One does not need to force an apple tree to produce apples. It bears apples because it is an apple tree." Let the Father's love transform your roots, and the sweet fruit of forgiveness will grow naturally. 67. To choose love is to choose to live in the reality of the kingdom of heaven right now. The world operates on the law of reciprocity, an eye for an eye. But the kingdom of heaven operates on the law of grace. Every time we choose forgiveness over revenge, love over hate, we are pulling a piece of heaven down to earth. we are living by the laws of our eternal homeland, even in this place of exile. "When will the kingdom of God come?" someone asked. Jesus replied, "The kingdom of God does not come with observable signs. Behold, the kingdom of God is within you. Every time you choose the path of love, you are building that kingdom right here, right now." 68. Love never fails, even when it fails to change the other person. We might spend a lifetime loving and praying for someone, yet they may never change. Was that love wasted? Absolutely not. Because the primary purpose of love is not to change others, but to transform the one who loves. Our hearts have become softer, more patient, and more like God. That in itself is a great victory. Jesus told the parable of the sower. Some seeds fell onto the path, some on rocky ground. They did not grow. Did the sower fail? No. He completed his work. Our job is to sow the seeds of love. Whether the seeds grow is up to the soil and to God. 69. How we treat the weakest among us and our greatest enemy is the most accurate measure of our soul. It is not eloquent prayers or ostentatious acts, but how we treat those who can offer us no benefit, the poor, and those we have every reason to hate, the enemy, that truly reveals who we are. It is the final test, where there is no room for hypocrisy. In the parable of the final judgment, the king says, "I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink." He does not ask about great achievements. He asks about specific acts of love for the least of these my brothers. And among the least are also the enemies we have chosen to love. 70. Ultimately, loving the enemy is rehearsal for life in heaven. In heaven, love is no longer a commandment, but the very atmosphere we breathe. There will be no more enemies, no more conflict. All things will be enveloped in the perfect love of God. The practice of loving our enemies in this life, however difficult, is how we train our spiritual lungs to breathe the atmosphere of eternity. John, the beloved disciple, wrote in his old age, "God is love." That is the culmination of a lifetime. The journey from hearing the command, "Love your enemy," to realizing God is love, is the entire life of a Christian. To practice love is to participate in the very being of God, preparing for the day we will see Him face to face, in a world where love is all. 71. When the enemy is gone, the remaining battle is with the memory of them. Sometimes the person who hurt us has passed away or left our lives. But their ghost, in the form of memory, continues to haunt us. Forgiveness now is not about confronting a person of flesh and blood, but about confronting their image in our mind. It is a dialogue with the past to liberate the present. A man whose harsh and cruel father had passed away told Jesus, "He is gone, but I still feel his chains on me every day." Jesus replied, "Then forgive the memory. Every time the harsh image of your father appears, do not banish it. Look at it and say, 'I forgive the pain you caused. I release you from my judgment.' You cannot change the past, but you can change how it lives in you." 72. Untangling a feud is like treating an infected wound. All the poison must be drawn out. Hatred is not just anger. It is a mixture of unconsoled pain, wounded pride, and a desire for justice twisted into revenge. Loving is a surgery. Bravely looking at each of those components, naming them, and offering them to God for healing, rather than covering them with a thin bandage of forgetfulness. "I try to forget, but I can't," a person said. Jesus replied, "You cannot heal a wound by pretending it doesn't exist. Bravely open it to the light of my Father. Say, 'Father, I am in pain. I feel humiliated. I want revenge.' When you are honest about your pain, that is when His healing power can begin to work." 73. Love frees us from the burden of having to find the answer to why. The human mind craves reasons, a logical explanation for the actions of others. But some evil acts have no satisfactory reason. Clinging to the question why will imprison us forever. Love is the acceptance that there are things we will never understand, and peace comes not from understanding, but from letting go. A person whose child was unjustly killed kept asking, "Why? Why my child?" Jesus sat with him in silence for a long time, then said, "My son, there are questions whose answers belong to God alone. If you keep searching for answers on earth, you will only find more darkness. Look up to heaven, and instead of asking why, ask, 'Father, how must I live now?' Love does not give us the answer. It gives us the way." 74. In a world that glorifies revenge, love is the most noble act of rebellion. Society often sees forgiveness as weakness and revenge as strength. Stories, songs, and histories praise vengeful heroes. When we choose to love our enemy, we are not just performing a personal act, but a political and spiritual one. We are challenging the entire value system of the world and declaring allegiance to another kingdom. The disciples saw the Romans parading, showing off their military might. They felt small and angry. Jesus said, "They have swords and chariots. That is the power of the world. But you have a weapon they cannot understand and cannot fight. It is a love capable of absorbing hatred without retaliating. One act of forgiveness from you shakes the foundations of their empire more than 1,000 rebellions with swords." 75. Forgiveness has a divine humor. It turns the entire script of hatred on its head. Hatred has a very predictable logic. You hurt me, I will hurt you back. This script is very heavy and tragic. Love enters unexpectedly, like a comedic element in a tragedy, making everything absurd. It exposes the foolishness and futility of hatred and opens the door to a liberating laugh. When someone threw mud at Jesus, instead of getting angry, he just smiled quietly. The thrower was confused. He was prepared for a response, an argument. But Jesus' smile disarmed him. A disciple later asked why. Jesus said, "He threw his bitterness at me. I don't have to accept it." My smile said, "Your gift I politely decline." It makes the script of hatred ridiculous. 76. Hate anchors us to a dead past. Love releases us into a living present. A person who harbors hatred does not truly live in the present. They are living in a moment from the past, replaying it over and over in their mind. Every day for them is just a shadow of yesterday. Love is the act of cutting that anchor rope, allowing the ship of the soul to be free to sail into the present, the only place where life truly happens. "It's been 10 years, but it still feels like yesterday," a person said of their grudge. Jesus replied, "Then you have lived the same day 3,650 times. You have not grown older, you have only grown stale. Forgive, not to erase the past, but to allow a true tomorrow to begin." 77. Every act of forgiveness is a stitch that mends the torn fabric of humanity. Imagine humanity as a great cloth woven from invisible connections. Every act of hatred, injustice, and violence is a knife that tears that cloth. Every act of forgiveness, however small, is a patient stitch, mending the world's integrity, helping to heal not only our relationship, but also the common wound of humankind. When the disciples saw division and conflict everywhere, they became discouraged. Jesus said, "Do not look at the great tears and despair. Focus on your needle. Today you can make one small stitch by forgiving your neighbor. That stitch, joined with 1,000,000 stitches from others, will mend the whole world." 78. Loving the enemy is a way of telling the darkness that it does not have the final word. The darkness of evil, of hatred, always wants to assert that it is the ultimate reality, that it will win. Every time we respond to evil with evil, we are agreeing with it. But every time we respond to evil with an act of love, we are making a prophecy, a declaration of faith that light has the final say, that life is stronger than death. Before his arrest, Jesus told his frightened disciples, "In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world." His victory was not by destroying his enemies, but by loving them to the very end on the cross. That love is the final declaration. 79. Hatred makes our world small. Love makes it infinite. The hater lives in a cramped world, confined by walls of pain and suspicion. Everything is seen through the lens of that grudge. The lover lives in an open world where new relationships, new possibilities, and new joys can always appear. To forgive is to break down the walls of one's own prison. Ever since I've held this grudge, I find no joy in anything anymore, a person confessed. Jesus replied, "How can you gaze at the stars when you are busy staring at the mud puddle at your feet? Look up. Forgiveness is the act of looking up from the puddle of resentment to see again the vastness of the sky of God's love." 80. Loving the enemy is an act of faith in God's harvest. We live in a hurry, wanting to see immediate results. We want our forgiveness to make the other person change right away. But love is the act of a farmer who sows a seed and trusts in the seasons, in the sun and the rain. We sow the seed of love and trust that God, in His time, will make it grow. A disciple said, "I have forgiven," but he still hasn't changed. Jesus asked, "When you plant a grain of rice, do you stand there all day watching for it to sprout? No, you go home and do other work, trusting that the earth and the sky will do their part. Sow your seed of love, then go back and live in peace. Let God worry about the harvest." 81. Loving the enemy, while feeling abandoned by God, is the purest love. It is easy to love when we feel full of grace, but to love when the soul is dry, when prayers seem unanswered, when we feel alone in our struggle, that is the love of Gethsemane and Golgotha. It is a love based not on feeling or comfort, but on a naked decision of the will, a pure act of obedience. In his agony on the cross, amidst physical pain and a sense of abandonment, Jesus cried out, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." That is the ultimate lesson. The strongest love is shown not on the mountaintop of transfiguration, but in the abyss of desolation. 82. The enemy helps us see the difference between religion and faith. Religion can be a system of rules, rituals, and self-righteousness. It often creates judgment and exclusion. Faith, conversely, is a living relationship of trust and love with God. The enemy is a test. If our piety leads to hatred, it is just religion. if it leads to an effort, however painful, to love, that is faith. Jesus told the Pharisees, "You give 1/10 of your spices, mint, dill, and cumin, but you have neglected the more important matters of the law, justice, mercy, and faithfulness." Mercy for the sinner, for the enemy. That is the test of true faith. 83. Indifference is the most sophisticated form of hatred. The true opposite of love is not explosive hatred, but cold indifference. To hate someone at least means we acknowledge their existence. Indifference means we see them as completely worthless, not even worth our attention. The call to love is also a call to fight against indifference, to see and acknowledge the humanity in everyone we meet. Jesus told the parable of the poor man, Lazarus, lying at the rich man's gate. The rich man's sin was not that he hated Lazarus. His sin was that he did not see Lazarus at all. He was indifferent to the presence of a human being. That indifference dug a great chasm between him and God. 84. Reconciliation with our brother is a prerequisite for true worship. We cannot simultaneously offer a gift to God with our right hand, while our left hand still clutches the sword of hatred. A heart unreconciled with one's brother is a closed door before God. The worship he desires is not sacrifice, but a broken heart and a reconciled spirit. Jesus taught very clearly. Therefore, if you are offering your gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First go and be reconciled to your brother. Then come and offer your gift. Horizontal reconciliation is the path to vertical union. 85. Love for the enemy is a faint reflection of the inner love of the Trinity. Within the Holy Trinity, there is an eternal flow of love, a complete self-giving among the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. It is a dance of selfless love. When we, as creatures, can love someone unlovable, we are participating in a small way in that divine dance. We are becoming most like God in his deepest essence. Jesus prayed, "That all of them may be one, Father, just as you are in me and I am in you. May they also be in us." That unity is woven by love. Love for the enemy breaks down all division and is the most concrete step toward the unity that Jesus desires. 86. Hate rereads the first chapter of the story. Love turns the page to write a new one. The person who holds on to hate is stuck. They reread the page recording the hurtful event, analyzing every word, unable to escape. The person of love, after having read and wept over that sad chapter, will bravely say, "My story does not end here." And they turn to a blank page, ready for God to write a new chapter with them about healing, hope, and resurrection. When Peter denied the Master, it was a tragic chapter. He could have been stuck in that chapter forever. But on the seashore, Jesus helped him turn the page. By asking, "Do you love me?" and giving the mission, "Feed my sheep," he opened a new and glorious chapter in Peter's life. 87. Love is not about feeling good, but about choosing to do what is right. Modern society often equates love with positive emotions, pleasant feelings. But biblical love is a principle, a commitment of the will. It often requires us to act contrary to our feelings. Loving the enemy rarely feels good, but it is always the right thing to do before God. In the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus did not feel like going to the cross. He sweat drops of blood. But he chose to do what was right, to obey the Father's will. His love was not a feeling, but an ultimate decision of obedience. 88. Loving the enemy is the most unexpected way to disarm them. The enemy expects fear or resistance. When we respond with an inexplicable love, we confuse them. We have refused to play their game by their rules. An unexpected act of kindness can be a shock that melts the ice of hatred in a way that no argument can. When Saul was on his way to persecute Christians, he was prepared for resistance. But instead, he encountered a light and a loving question. "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?" That love struck him down, disarmed him, and transformed him from a persecutor into an apostle. 89. See your enemy through the lens of the cross. When anger reaches its peak, perform a spiritual exercise. Visualize your enemy standing at the foot of the cross. See the blood of Christ pouring down on them, cleansing them too. Hear the words, "Father, forgive them," being spoken for them as well. When we can see our enemy as someone whom Christ also loves and died for, our hatred will begin to dissolve. A disciple looked at a Roman soldier with eyes full of hate. Jesus said gently, "When I was lifted up, I did not only see you and my mother at the foot of the cross, I also saw this soldier. I also saw those who nailed me. My love is big enough to embrace them all. Can your love try to stretch that far?" 90. Love is not one commandment in the law. It is the fulfillment of the entire law. The laws and commandments are like the spokes of a wheel. They are all important. But love is the hub at the center, where all the spokes converge and from which they derive their strength and meaning. If you have love, you will naturally not steal, not murder, not bear false witness. To love is the shortcut to fulfilling all of God's holy will. When a lawyer asked which was the greatest commandment, Jesus did not choose one of the 10 commandments. He summarized everything into love. To love God with all your heart, and to love your neighbor as yourself. He went even further by defining neighbor to include the enemy. Grasp love, and you will grasp the entire scripture. So our journey through the 90 philosophies on the teaching "Love your enemies" has come to an end. We started from a command that seemed impossible, only to discover that it is not a burden, but a master key that opens the door to inner freedom, true peace, and the deepest healing. Through each stage, we realized that loving the enemy is not an act of weakness, but the pinnacle of strength. It is not about erasing memory, but about healing memory. It is not a feeling, but a courageous decision of the will, repeated daily. It is the weapon of light, capable of disarming all weapons of darkness, the language of our eternal home that we are practicing here in our place of exile. This journey may not be easy, and none of us can accomplish it perfectly. But please remember, God looks not at our success, but at our effort and our hearts. Every time we choose forgiveness over resentment, every prayer we whisper for the one who hurt us, every small act of kindness we give against the world's expectations, is a time we pull a piece of the kingdom of heaven down to earth and make this world a little more like heaven. On behalf of the production team, Church Audio sincerely thanks you for listening and for accompanying us on this profound spiritual journey. May the seeds of wisdom that have been sown in the soil of each of our souls bear the fruits of peace and love. If you were touched by these reflections, please leave a comment below, letting us know which philosophy truly impressed you and helped you reflect on your life. Your reflections are a precious gift to our entire community. Please spread this message of love and healing by sharing the video with your relatives, friends, or anyone you think needs a word of comfort. a source of strength to be able to forgive. And finally, if you love our content, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell to not miss the next meaningful spiritual journeys with Church Audio. Once again, thank you sincerely. Wishing you a day full of peace and a heart always open in the love of God. Church Audio bids you farewell and looks forward to seeing you again, 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 to seeing you again.